What's up, everyone, and welcome back to the End Zone Report. As always, I will be your host, Chris, and this is a show where we tackle the NFL. That wraps it up for Week 11. Now we're heading into Week 12 of the regular season. We're only a few weeks away from those fantasy playoffs and fantasy championships, and we have about 6 more weeks until the regular season is over, and we are heading into the NFL playoffs. We are going to stay on this show for the NFL playoffs. We're going to have some guests come on, some major predictions and Super Bowl related fun on the show. Then we'll head into the off season where we'll have a few episodes during that time. Then we'll head right back into the season with 2026 with the weekly episodes. But today we're going to cover some of the major injuries and storylines that happened this past week. Then we'll jump into the fantasy corner with hero and villain of the week. And then we'll get into that Week 12 slate. There's some really awesome matchups and then some really head-scratching ones that I got stuck on, but we're going to talk them through this week on the show. And then we'll wrap it up like we always do with a DraftKings lineup. I'm super excited for this week's lineup. I took a little bit of extra time on this one. We're going to see if we can win some money back this week. But I think we got a pretty solid lineup going forward, so we'll break that down at the end of the show. Couple of reminders at the top of the episode. You can watch the show every week at youtube.com/TheEndZoneReport. You can also listen to the audio version on Spotify. Go ahead and hit that subscribe, follow button. It helps the show out a lot. You can also follow the social media pages for the show on Facebook, X, and Instagram. Post a lot of artwork from the episodes that drop, as well as some major news and injuries that happened as they come through from the NFL reporting. So with that, let's head over and see what's up with the NFL this week. We have some more massive injuries that happened in Week 11. Starting off at the quarterback position, Michael Penix Jr. of the Atlanta Falcons suffered a knee injury. He is now out for the rest of the season, which means Kirk Cousins will be taking over for the rest of the season at quarterback. Dylan Gabriel of the Cleveland Browns suffered a concussion. There's a possibility that he will be missing multiple weeks. This week for Week 12, Shedeur Sanders has been named the starter. Aaron Rodgers suffered a left wrist injury. There's fear that he had a slight break in that wrist. Mason Rudolph had to relieve him of duties in the middle of the Week 11 matchup. We'll see if he does end up being ruled out. If he does, that means Mason Rudolph will get the start for this week. At the running back position, Josh Jacobs of the Green Bay Packers suffered a knee injury. We'll have to monitor that one very, very closely. Of course, if he does not play, that would mean Emmanuel Wilson will get the bulk of the load. Kimani Vidal, who's headed into the bye with the Chargers, he suffered a thigh injury. So we'll monitor that through the bye week and see if he returns in Week 13. Jaylen Warren of the Pittsburgh Steelers suffered an ankle injury. We'll monitor that one as well. They seem pretty hopeful that he will start in Week 12. But if he does not, that means Kenneth Gainwell will get the start once again. So if you're heading into your fantasy week, needing some wins here down the stretch before playoffs, pick up these guys, the backups to these guys, because they could be league winners, especially Kenneth Gainwell. He's shown a lot of really good spurts when he gets the workload. So definitely look on your waiver wires and your fantasy leagues and see if you can pick these backups up. At the wide receiver position, returning back to the Atlanta Falcons, Drake London suffered a knee injury. He is probably going to be missing multiple weeks. So that means Darnell Mooney, Kyle Pitts will get some more reps in. McCole Hardman suffered a calf injury, and then Calvin Ridley broke his fibula early on in the game. This was the week that he was returning back from the previous injury that he had. He is now out for the rest of the season, so the Titans are just in the dumps right now with the way that their season has been going. They have now lost their number one wide receiver for the rest of the year. Also on the Titans, Kamara DK suffered a concussion in the middle of the Week 11 matchup, so we'll see if he goes through protocol and is available for Week 12. And then Lane Johnson of the Philadelphia Eagles suffered a foot injury. He will possibly be hitting injured reserve, so that is a huge hit to the Philadelphia Eagles overall. He has been a great tackle for that team. Losing him has really going to be a real big hit to that team overall heading down the stretch here before the playoffs. And then some other news. You're probably wondering why Keon Coleman was a last minute healthy scratch this week. Well, it turns out that he missed or he was late, either one, for a team meeting. So as punishment, he was sat on the bench this week. It sounds like Keon Coleman might not be with the Bills for much longer. They have been pretty disappointed in him as both a wide receiver and a team member of the Bills. And then Jamar Chase. We have another spitgate on our hands this week. Jamar Chase has been suspended for one game for week 12 for spitting on Jalen Ramsey, cornerback of the Pittsburgh Steelers. If you have not seen that video online, you probably will now, because Jamar Chase, after the end of the game, stated that he did not spit on Jalen Ramsey, but clearly in the video footage, he did spit on his jersey. So he will be suspended and fined for that. I think that pretty much wraps up the majority of the injuries going forward. We'll monitor some of the other ones that has happened throughout the week. Let me see if there's any last minute ones before we move on to the next segment today. It does not look like there's any other ones. Tyrod Taylor has been named the starter for week 12. And that's all I'm seeing right here as of now. So we'll post more on the social media pages as more comes out in the next couple days before kickoff on week 12. So let's head over to the weekly reaction with those storylines of week 11. So the first week 11 storyline is Jacoby Brissett sets the NFL completion record with 47 completions for 452 yards. Jacoby Brissett has been a monster this last few weeks, taking over from Kyler Murray. He heads into this week against the Jaguars, so we will see if he can continue this hot streak without Marvin Harrison. It sounds like he will not be back this week, so that will leave with Michael Wilson, Greg Dortch, Trey McBride, and also DeMarcado will probably not be playing either. So we'll have a mixture of Michael Carter and who was the other one? Bam Knight. So we'll get kind of a two-headed monster at running back. But Jacoby Brissett has been kind of a bright spot for the Cardinals the last few weeks. So we'll see if they can keep that momentum going against Trevor Lawrence and the Cardinals. But bravo to Jacoby Brissett for setting that NFL record on completions. The Broncos, my Broncos, take down Patrick Mahomes and Kansas City, knocking them down to 5-5, remaining in third in the AFC West. That is the 8th straight win for the Broncos. I believe that is the same as the New England Patriots. So they have the longest streak of wins in the NFL so far. They also have the best records at 9-2. And we'll get into that more when we get to the playoff seeding, a couple storylines coming up. But the Broncos, they've been taking a lot of heat lately with their schedule and the certain wins that they have been getting. But this was the true test against KC, and they came out on top. Now, it was still kind of a low-scoring game. It was 22-19 with the last-second kick made by Mr. Will Lutz, giving them that win over Kansas City. Kansas City is in some big dookie water right now. At 5-5, that is really, really tough to come back. I think even if they win straight out the last weeks, they're still going to need a little bit of help from other teams to make the playoffs. So 5-5, this is the worst start of a season since the Patrick Mahomes era started. The first time that they have gone 500 or below in their record. And this is red alert for the Chiefs. Now, obviously, no one's going to really get fired after this. Maybe Spagnuolo with the great help that he has done on the defense. Maybe he ends up getting a head coaching job somewhere. But I think the coaching staff, the players, of course, are going to stay the same. The only one that I could say would probably not be on this team next year will be Travis Kelce, but that'll be due to retirement or whatever you want to call it for him. So this is probably going to be the year that he calls it quits. Of course, all it takes is for them to not make the playoffs for him to quit. I think if they would have made the playoffs and potentially shown themselves in the Super Bowl, he might consider coming back. But if they don't make the playoffs this year, I seriously doubt that Travis Kelce comes back for another year. He's got other things going on outside of the NFL that he can start moving on with his life. Mahomes, of course, is still going to be one of the top quarterbacks in the league. He's going to be definitely a Hall of Famer. So if they end up missing the playoffs this year, I don't think that's going to taint the persona that is Patrick Mahomes. I think that'll just give them the opportunity to reassess that team, to fix that running back room, to strengthen up the wide receiver room with actual weapons that he can use aside from Rashee Rice. They're going to obviously have to replace Travis Kelce. Noah Gray has been a decent backup, so maybe they try him out next year, but they definitely need help in the wide receiver room and the running back room because Patrick Mahomes cannot do it himself. But 5-5 is real tough for the KC fans, and to speak for everyone in the league, I think it's about time that we have the KC team kind of take a step back from playoffs. They've been in it every single year since Mahomes started. And it's time for some new teams, some new blood in the playoffs. It's really awesome to see the Broncos and the Patriots led by Drake May at the top of the AFC. And not just the AFC, but the NFL overall. They have the best record at 9-2. So it's really, really exciting to be a Broncos fan. It's really exciting to just be a football fan because now KC could potentially miss the playoffs for the first time since the Patrick Mahomes era started. So, go Broncos, baby! Let's give Bo Nix that MVP trophy, even though there's quite a few names ranked above him that deserve it as well. But it's good. It's a good week to be a Broncos fan. Good year to be a Broncos fan. So let's keep that going. Jamar Chase has done it. He has joined the club with Jalen Carter in the spit take gate. I already mentioned it already in the segment before, but we'll go over it one more time. So Jamar Chase went up against Jalen Ramsey this past week in that matchup between the Bengals and the Steelers. Jalen Ramsey was locking him down all game. He was not winning that battle at all. It was a T. Higgins show, and it was a Chase Brown show, but they still got pretty much pummeled by the Steelers, even with Aaron Rodgers getting injured. So this probably frustrated Jamar Chase a lot to where Jalen Ramsey was probably talking crap to him and he just couldn't take it anymore and just spat on his jersey. Now, Jamar Chase has come out multiple times in reports as well as sent an appeal for this. Obviously, he is not going to win that appeal because there is actual camera footage of him spitting on Jalen Ramsey's jersey. Now, the quote, now I might be paraphrasing this a little bit, but Jamar Chase's defense of this was, if I was going to spit on somebody, I'd spit on their face, not the ground or the jersey. Well, technically, if you spit on somebody's jersey, Jamar, that is spitting on a person. So you probably just need to take accountability, buddy. Even though I love Jamar Chase, this was a very bad no-no on his part. And I hope this suspension for one game kind of makes him grow up a little bit and be more professional and be able to kind of zero out that frustration from the opposite defense and just focus on being the superstar that he is. So Jamar Chase will be suspended for week 12 and he'll also be fined. I think he was fined like 50 some grand or something along those lines for that spit. And we need to stop this spitting. Like, it's ridiculous. We've had 2 now and it's just egregious. That's 2 more than what we need. We already dealt with it at the beginning of the year. Now we're dealing with the beginning of the year, the middle of the year. Now I'm afraid of the end of the regular season into the playoffs if we're going to get another spit gate going on here. But we got to cut it out. Just keep this lava in your mouth. Stay focused. Don't let those frustrations take over your head and just play football. That's all we want. The next story I got, I wanted to have a little bit of fun this week. So this one is what I call the good, the bad, the really, and this is the QB edition. So the good quarterbacks, we've got Josh Allen, Bryce Young, and Dak Prescott as our good quarterbacks this week. Josh Allen went 317 passing yards, 40 rushing on the yards on the ground. He had 3 passing touchdowns, 3 rushing touchdowns. That's 6 total touchdowns this week. But he did throw 2 interceptions, but we're going to ignore that. He did have 30 pass attempts in this game. How many of those were completions? He had 19 completions, so not great, but it's over 50%, so we're going to forgive him there. But 6 total touchdowns. Just a monster game from Josh Allen. Bryce Young had a game of his own. He had 448 passing yards. He had -1 rushing yard, so we'll pretty much ignore that. But he had 0 interceptions, which is really awesome for Bryce Young. He threw 3 passing touchdowns and had 45 pass attempts. How many did he complete of that 45? 31. Pretty solid. So he himself had a game against Atlanta, also getting the win there. Josh Allen, of course, won against Baker Mayfield and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And then Dak Prescott, not as exciting, but still very exciting. He had 4 passing touchdowns. He threw for 268 passing yards, -4 rushing yards, so we'll pretty much eliminate that. He himself didn't throw any interception in this game, and he threw for 25 of 33 pass attempts, so pretty solid as well. So he had himself a game on Monday night against the Raiders. Now the bad. We've got Patrick Mahomes, Matthew Stafford, and Jalen Hurts. Let me pull up those stats here. Patrick Mahomes, 276 passing yards, not too shabby. He only had the 1 passing touchdown, so that's pretty disappointing. And then he had that 1 interception. He only rushed for 3 yards. But he did have 29 completions out of 45 pass attempts, so not too shabby. But not that 1 passing touchdown and being below 300 passing yards is a bit concerning, as well as that interception, so not great. Matthew Stafford, who has been a monster and leads the league in passing touchdowns, I believe. He did not have a great week here. He only had 130 passing yards. Very disappointing. He did have 2 passing touchdowns, but he has been averaging anywhere from 3 to 4. So that's a big bummer on his part. He didn't throw any interceptions, so I'll give him that. But the 130 passing yards, pretty disappointing. 15 completions out of 28 pass attempts. Not great, but not horrible. So pretty disappointing in the passing yard department for Stafford. And then the third one was Jalen Hurts. Now, there's been some rumblings that there is some internal arguments going on in the Philly camp, specifically the wide receiver room with how Jalen Hurts has been playing this year. And these numbers show 135 passing yards. That is not going to get the job done, even though they did end up beating Detroit. It was a low-scoring game, pretty boring as well. They won 16-9. He had the only touchdown for Philadelphia, and that was a rushing touchdown. He didn't throw any interceptions, which is great. But that 135 passing yards is horrendous. He only had 14 completions out of the 28 that he attempted. So, he did have 31 yards on the ground from 10 rushing attempts. So he's been just pretty much a runner this year. The passing game has not been great for Philly. Now, is that a Jalen Hurts problem? Is that a game scheme problem? Is that game planning from the coaches? I guess take your pick, but the wide receivers are not liking this current state of the Philadelphia Eagles. I don't think they can maintain this in the playoffs. So we will see how far of a run that they can make unless they make a massive change here with the wide receivers and the passing game. But pretty disappointing week from Jalen Hurts in the passing yard department. And then finally, with Sam Darnold, Lamar Jackson, and Justin Herbert. These are the horrendous performances from week 11. Sam Darnold, 279 passing yards. Okay, not too shabby. 29 completions out of 44 pass attempts. Okay, we can get behind that. 4 interceptions for Sam Darnold. 4 interceptions. against the Rams. Now, the Rams have been a great defense. It's a division game. Obviously, they're going to play this game tough. But 4 interceptions, that is the most that he has had in a single game this year. That is unacceptable from Sam Darnold. And then he rushed for 11 yards on 2 attempts. But those 4 interceptions is what cost the Seahawks the game. Like, they had a shot to win this game and keep the first spot in the NFC West. But the 4 interceptions, that just hurts so much. So Sam Darnold in the really segment. Lamar Jackson, 193 passing yards, gross. 14 completions out of 25 pass attempts, gross. 0 passing touchdowns, gross. 2 interceptions, gross. 10 rushing yards on 4 attempts, okay, fine. He probably had to scramble. 0 rushing touchdowns, gross. Terrible week from Mr. Lamar Jackson. They ended up getting this win from Cleveland, but that Cleveland defense does play tough with Myles Garrett. He has been getting at the quarterback all year, but that is such a disappointing stat line from Lamar Jackson. And then to finish off this storyline, Justin Herbert. 81 passing yards, gross. 10 completions out of 18 pass attempts, gross. Now, Harbaugh did pull Justin Herbert out, and Trey Lance did come into this game. I'm trying to verify if this was due to an injury, and I don't believe it was. This was strictly that the game got out of hand. What else did we have? 1 interception, gross. 0 passing touchdowns, gross. He did rush for 21 yards on 3 attempts, so not bad, but 0 rushing touchdowns, gross. So just a disgusting display from Justin Herbert against the Jacksonville Jaguars. They got just dominated 35-6. So that's probably why he was released out of this game early, due to that game getting out of hand, but just a horrendous playing. So that was this week's The Good, The Bad, The Really. QB edition. We will return to this one in the coming weeks with some other positions and talking about some stat lines. So the final storyline of the week, looking ahead to the NFL playoffs, I wanted to go break down the current playoff seeding if the season had ended after week 11. So we're going to start with the AFC. AFC, we got the Broncos at number 1 at 9-2. Patriots at number 2, also at 9-2. Then come the Colts at number 3 at 8-2, so just 1 game behind. Then we get a little bit of a break here. We have the Steelers at number 4 at 6-4. Now that is because they are division leaders. Now we're going to get into everybody else here. So at number 5, we have the Bills at 7-3. Okay, pretty solid. Number 6 is the Chargers at 7-4, and they are the fakest 7-4 that I've ever seen. I would not be surprised if the Chargers end up getting kicked from the playoff seeding, because after the display that they had this week against Jacksonville, they do not deserve to be in a playoff spot with the current state of that team. They need to get something going on offense, and that defense just can't stop anybody. So I think if anyone's going to get kicked from this list right now, it's going to be the Chargers, and it could be the Steelers. Baltimore is making a comeback, so I could see the Steelers getting kicked if Rodgers cannot get something going, and if that wrist injury ends up lingering for the rest of the season. So that's another team that could potentially. But I would put my money on the Chargers getting kicked from this list before the Steelers. And then at number 7 is the Jaguars at 6-4. They have been pretty surprising these last couple weeks. They've looked pretty strong on defense, and the offense has been dealing with some injuries, but they still get the job done. So that is the current seeding of the AFC. Let's head over to the NFC. And it's quite a battle here in the NFC. So at number 1 is the Eagles at 8-2. At number 2 is the Rams, which is also at 8-2, so a tight race there. And then number 3, we have the Bears at 7-3, which we'll see. That division was looking like it could be very competitive, but I think the Bears have the division for the rest of the season. But we'll keep an eye on the NFC North for sure. Number 4. We have the Buccaneers at 6-4, so that wraps up your guys' division leaders. Now we get into everybody else. So at 5, we have the Seahawks at 7-3. I'm pretty sure that the Seahawks are going to maintain a playoff position. We'll see if Sam Darnold can bounce back from last year's debacle in the playoffs when he was with the Minnesota Vikings. At number 6, we have the Packers at 6-3-1. I really hate that there's a tie on this record. It screws everything up, especially the playoff seeding. And at number 7, we have the 49ers at 7-4. If we were going to kick anybody from this list, I would say the Packers could get kicked from here. I think there's some other NFC teams that could bounce past the Packers. I think the Bears, the way that Caleb Williams is playing right now and the way that Ben Johnson is currently coaching that team, I think it's the Bears' division to lose. I'm predicting them to keep that division lead and claim a playoff spot. But I could be wrong. It's still kind of a tight race there between Detroit, Packers, and Chicago. But if I'm going to kick anybody off this list, it's going to be the Green Bay Packers. They have not looked great. The wide receiver room is a mess. The defense has not been as good as we thought it was going to be. Now with the Josh Jacobs injury and Jordan Love constantly getting injured every other week, it's tough. And then who knows how long Christian Watson is going to hang in there. Now, I think Jaden Reed should be back here shortly for the Packers, but that wide receiver room needs help. Like Tucker Kraft getting ruled out for the rest of the year hurt them a lot. And now if this injury with Josh Jacobs lingers or he's out multiple weeks, that's going to hurt Green Bay a lot. So I could see them getting kicked from this playoff seeding. So that is the NFC playoff seeding currently. We'll revisit this come week 17 and week 18, and we'll see what the final seeding looks like for the playoffs. So that is this week's storylines. To wrap up the weekly reaction, let's revisit the Chase-O-meter after taking a break last week. So the current ranking for Chase Brown is running back 17 on the year. So he dropped down a little bit from 14. He is now at 17, but there's still a chance for Megan to get into that top 10 and claim $20. But right now it's looking like Mr. James Martin's $20 to lose. He has been in the lead on this bet all year, but the last couple of weeks with Joe Flacco has been really beneficial for Chase Brown. He's getting more involved. He's being more efficient and more productive with his opportunities. So we will see what happens when Joe Burrow comes back. He is slated to come back either week 13 or week 14. We'll have to monitor those practices and what the coaching staff feels that they need to do. Now, of course, record probably going to come into factor a little bit in his return. So we could possibly be getting him as soon as week 13 to hopefully try to bounce back in the record department. Or maybe they want to just hold off and wait till week 14 till he's 100% healthy. But I think either way, Chase Brown has a decent opportunity here to break that top 10 if they get into the right situation. So looking at the breakdown of his stats from week 11, now depending on your league's scorings, in the standard league that I run, he had 18.7 fantasy points. So that's 18 carries on the ground for 99 rushing yards. So really good. Just quite couldn't break that 100, but 99 still really solid. Then he had 6 receptions for 28 receiving yards. Still no touchdowns yet. Hopefully in week 12 that he can score a touchdown after a drought that he's been having. So that is the Chase-O-meter. We will return back after week 12 and see where Chase Brown slates in the running back ranking. All right, let's head over to this week's Fantasy Corner with Hero and Villain of the Week. All right, your Hero of the Week for Week 11 is Josh Allen, quarterback of the Buffalo Bills. His fantasy points, 53.9 points. Massive monster game from Josh Allen. His completions were 19. He threw for 317 yards. He rushed another 40 yards on the ground. He threw 2 interceptions, so a little bit of his score would have been much better if he didn't throw any picks. But he did have 6 total touchdowns, 3 on the ground, and then another 3 through the air. So week 11 was all Josh Allen. He is your hero of the week. I hope you won your fantasy lineup with him. You most likely did, but there's always that chance that you were going up against some other monster players this week that could have lost it, but more than likely you probably won your week if you had Josh Allen in your lineup. Villain of the week for week 11. We head back to Philadelphia, but we go with the other wide receiver, Devontae Smith. Horrible week. 1.8 fantasy points for Mr. Devontae Smith. Now, that is probably due to game script, to whatever plan that they had for Jalen Hurts, because he did not throw at all. He only had 135 passing yards. So this was very, very disappointing to not just Devontae Smith managers, but also Jalen Hurts managers, AJ Brown managers. So this was just a really bad game for any Eagles that you were waiting for Sunday night. They ended up winning the game, so I guess take that as a plus. But fantasy-wise, it was just all bad for the Philadelphia Eagles. He had one reception for 8 yards on 5 targets and 0 touchdowns. So just a gross week from Devontae Smith. So he is your villain of the week. If you started him, you probably lost your week. I know I did because of him. He was one of my 3 wide receivers that I started. So very, very disappointing from Devontae Smith. So he is your villain, and Josh Allen is your hero of week 11. So that'll do it for this week's Fantasy Corner. Return next time for week 12 hero and villain of the week. Let's head into that week 12 game slate. So looking back at week 11 real quick, we got 11 correct picks, 4 wrong picks. So pretty solid week for week 11. Let's try to get all of these games right. Heading into week 12, we've got 4 teams on bye: Denver Broncos, Los Angeles Chargers, Miami Dolphins, and Washington Commanders. So if you are a fan base of any of those teams, sit back and enjoy some football with 0 stress level rising. So I will enjoy my bye week, and let's head into the week 12 game slate. Thursday night football. We have the Buffalo Bills taking on the Houston Texans. Looks like Davis Mills will be the starter. We're waiting on official confirmation yet, but it looks like CJ Stroud is still in concussion protocol, so it's probably going to be Davis Mills once more against Josh Allen and the Bills. The Bills are favored by 6. The over-under is 43.5. I'm taking the Bills here. There is no betting against Josh Allen. He is just a monster this year. He was a monster last week. I think he's going to have a really good game this week. So we're going to go with the Buffalo Bills once more to take down the Houston Texans. So we don't have any more international games this year. We'll return next year for some of those games overseas. So we are back to a normal slate for noon/1 o'clock and then 3/4 o'clock games here in the afternoon window. The New York Jets take on Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens. Baltimore is favored by 13.5 points. The over-under is 44.5. Tyrod Taylor will be starting this game. No word yet on Garrett Wilson. Let's pop into his known status here. Garrett Wilson. If he is not playing this game, they don't have a real shot. He is on IR still. Okay. Jets do expect him to play again this season. He was placed by IR a week ago. So this will be week 2 in his injured reserve time frame. I'm going to be honest with you. They can expect all they want. I don't think Garrett Wilson is going to come back this year. I wouldn't rush him. I mean, this team is at the bottom of the barrel. They're going to have a high draft pick again next year. So just keep him on the bench, keep him healthy, and just move on with your lives. I am taking Baltimore here. There is no absolute reason that could make me pick the Jets. Even if Lamar was still injured and wasn't playing in this game, I still would take the Ravens over the Jets. Them basically selling their defense during the deadline really hurt them, with the unknown of the quarterback room. The wide receivers are a mess. Brees Hall is really the only stable running back, but he's probably not going to be on the team next year. So he's just kind of buying his time until he can get to a new team. So I'm taking Baltimore Ravens here without even a second thought. The Pittsburgh Steelers take on the Chicago Bears. Chicago is favored by 2.5. The over-under is 44.5. This makes me think that Aaron Rodgers is probably not going to play in this game if Chicago is favored by that much, or if they're even favored at all. Their defense is pretty solid. Steelers' defense has been coming up in the been improving the last few weeks, but without Aaron Rodgers, it's tough to take the Steelers here. I went back and forth on here trying to wait for any injury update on Aaron Rodgers. Let's see what the latest is here for Mr. Rodgers. Still marked questionable. He is hopeful to practice tomorrow. He was out today, but normally he is because he is a veteran. So will not require surgery, so that is good. So he'll probably be back if he does miss this week. He should be back in week 13. But with the line being here in favor of the Bears, I'm going to assume that Aaron Rodgers is not playing in this game. So I am going to go with the Chicago Bears. I'm finally going to take Chicago here and hopefully that they win against Pittsburgh. They are in Chicago too, so that helps being in Soldier Field. So we're going to ride the Caleb train. The New England Patriots take on Cincinnati and Joe Flacco. New England is favored by 8.5. The over-under is a whopping 50. Drake May is playing out of his mind. He is the lead. He is in the lead for the MVP race right now, right in front of Matthew Stafford. Joe Flacco has been playing really, really well since taking over from the injured Joe Burrow. Now, there's no Jamar Chase in this game, so that is really going to affect Joe Flacco's numbers. So I'm going to go with the Patriots here. The Bengals defense is non-existent. They can't get anything going on defense, and now with Jamar Chase sitting out, that really hurts the offense. So I'm going to go with New England. I'm surprised they're not favored even more, like in the range of the Ravens where they're 2 touchdowns favored. So, but I'm going to go with Drake May and ride the Lightning with the New England Patriots. New York Giants take on the Detroit Lions. Detroit is favored by a whopping 10.5. The over-under is 50 as well. Now, if Jackson Dart was playing in this game, I would have a tougher time picking this, but it'll most likely be Jameis Winston. Let me check that just to be sure that it's not Russell Wilson. I can't imagine it's going to be Russell Wilson. Yep, Jameis Winston likely to number 2. Oh, okay. So Jackson Dart is trending to play as of 5 hours ago, according to ESPN.com. Winston is expected to serve as the Giants' number 2, leading Wilson as number 3. Okay, so that is interesting if Dart does play. I think with Detroit losing that game last week, they're going to be on fire in Detroit with a recovering Jackson Dart. I'm going to go with the Lions here. No Cam Scattaboo. Theo Johnson's been dropping passes left and right. No Malik Neighbors. Sounds like Darius Slayton is still banged up. So I'm going to go with the Lions here. Even though I am tempted to take the Giants here just because the Lions have been in kind of a slump and Dart can get it going on the ground. But I'm going to go with the Lions here. I think I would sound pretty crazy if I went with the New York Giants right now, especially with how this line is looking. So I'm going to go with Detroit. We have another NFC North battle. Minnesota Vikings going on the road against the Green Bay Packers. Green Bay is favored by 6.5. The over-under is a measly 41.5. I'm going with Green Bay. As much as I would like to take Minnesota here, I just I can't with that current state of McCarthy and the way the wide receivers were performing last week with just dropping balls left and right. The Vikings are just in a real bad spot right now, especially in the QB position. I don't know if you saw any of that game or saw any highlights, but they were booing McCarthy and chanting Brosmer in the stadium, apparently. So Minnesota fans are just not liking the Vikings right now, the current state of it. Now, the Packers haven't been much better, with the Josh Jacobs injury, with the always looming black dark cloud around Christian Watson, everyone crossing their fingers and toes that he doesn't get injured. Jordan Love is always getting banged up. The defense hasn't been as great as we wanted it to be with Micah Parsons, but I think Micah Parsons is going to be able to get to McCarthy with that offensive line for the Vikings. So I'm going to go with Green Bay here to take this game at home, especially with being almost touchdown favorites here. I'm going to go with Green Bay, even though I absolutely hate the Packers, and the Vikings are the home team where I live. So I'll still be rooting for the Vikings, of course. But I'm gonna pick the Packers here. It's tough to pick the Vikings right now. The Indianapolis Colts take on Patrick Mahomes and the KC Chiefs. KC is favored by 3.5. No shock there. The over-under is 49.5. I am taking the Colts here. I just, with the way that offense is running with the Kansas City Chiefs, I can't pick them even go in Arrowhead. The Colts with Jonathan Taylor and Daniel Jones leading the charge are just fun entertainment to watch every week. I just can't pick the Chiefs. And not just because I'm a Broncos fan. I can't stand the Chiefs because I am the Broncos fan, but it's also because Patrick Mahomes can't keep doing it himself. He has nobody to throw it to other than Rashee Rice. That running back room is non-existent almost. He's the leading rusher for that team. The defense is pretty solid, but they gave up enough points for Bo Nix and the Broncos to win. So I'm going with the Colts here. I'm going to ride the Danny Dimes train, and Jonathan Taylor being the monster that he is this year, I'm going to go with the Colts on the road to beat the Chiefs. The Seattle Seahawks take on Cam Ward and the Tennessee Titans. Seattle is, surprise, favored by a whopping 13.5 points. The over-under is a measly 40.5. That is not even the lowest of the week, but it's one of the lowest. I'm going with Seattle. There is no way I'm picking the Titans. The Seattle defense is pretty solid this year. I think Darnold's going to bounce back from that 4-interception performance from last week against the Rams. He's going to have Jackson Smith-Njigba. He's going to have Rashid Shaheed, Cooper Kupp. A.J. Barner got 11 targets last week. You have the combination of Charbonnet and Walker. I think the Seahawks are just going to roll over to the Titans and take this win on the road to bounce back from last week. The Jacksonville Jaguars take on the Arizona Cardinals. Jacksonville is favored by 2.5. The over-under is 47.5. This is one of the games that I went back and forth. But I'm with the Arizona Cardinals. And it sounds gross. It feels gross. But after the slaughtering that the Jaguars gave to the Chargers, I think they're in for a rude awakening. And this is going to come down to a field goal. And I think the Cardinals are going to win this game. And with Brissett, the way he's playing right now, he's averaging 350 to 400 yards a game. I know they won't have Marvin Harrison, but Michael Wilson filled his shoes just fine last week with 185 freaking yards. Trey McBride is the number 1 tight end on the year. You're going to have a non-existent running back room, so Brissett's going to just throw. The Cardinals' defense hasn't been great, but not horrible. Now, the Jaguars are suffering a bunch of injuries on the wide receiver front. Trevor Lawrence has been inefficient. I know ETN is banged up, so we could be getting a lot of tooting. Now, the Jaguars' defense has been getting to the quarterback, so I think Brissett's going to be uncomfortable in this game. But I'm going with the Cardinals to win this game, probably by a field goal, maybe even less. But, I'm going to go with Arizona here. The Cleveland Browns take on the Las Vegas Raiders. This is going to be a disgusting game. The Raiders are actually favored by 3.5. Over under, measly 36.5. That is disgusting. Why do we have to watch this game? I mean, you don't have to, depending on what area of the country you're in, but I watch the red zone, so I'm going to have to watch this game anyways. But I'm taking the Browns. The Browns defense is just going to slaughter Geno Smith this week. I know he's got Brock Bowers and Aston Genty, but that's about it. I mean, his wide receiver room is Trey Tucker, Tyler Lockett, and Jack Besh. Like, that's not going to get the job done. I know the Browns' offense isn't any better with now Shadir Sanders coming in, with Jerry Jeudy, David Njoku. I think Judkins will have a bounce-back game against this Raiders defense. Now, Max Crosby probably going to make Shadir very, very uncomfortable, but I think that Browns defense is going to make Geno Smith even more uncomfortable. So I'm going to go with the Cleveland Browns here and upset the Raiders according to this stat line. The Philadelphia Eagles take on division rival, the Dallas Cowboys in Dallas. Philly is favored by 3.5. The over-under is 47.5. This is another one where I was going back and forth. Who did I end up taking? Let's see here. I ended up taking Philly. I think Philly is probably going to find a groove here against this very terrible Cowboys defense. I think A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, Saquon Barkley, I think they're going to bounce back this week. I think they're going to squash their differences, and I think Jalen Hurts is going to have a pretty solid game here fantasy-wise and NFL-wise. Now, this could be a shootout. You know, Dak Prescott's been slinging the ball like crazy. He threw 4 touchdowns last week. He could throw another 4 this week to CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens. But looking at the defenses and who's giving up the most points, Cowboys, bottom of the league for defense. So I'm going to go with Philly here to bounce back from all those reports and everything that A.J. Brown has said over the past few weeks. I think Philly takes this one on the road against their big division rival, the Cowboys. Last of the Sunday afternoon games, the Atlanta Falcons take on the New Orleans Saints. Atlanta favored by 1.5, so it's basically a coin flip here. 39.5 measly points is the over-under. Now, Kirk Cousins will start for the Falcons. Tyler Shuck will start for the Saints. Same thing with the Browns-Raiders game. This game's gross. I don't want to watch it, but I'll be watching Red Zone, so I'm going to have to watch a piece of this game. Again, I went back and forth in this one. I ultimately went with the Falcons, even though they have basically screwed me over every time I picked them to win. So, we're going to cross our fingers. Hope this week is the week that they finally don't let me down and they beat the Saints, because this game is gross, and I literally flipped the coin and it landed on the Falcons. So we're going to go with the Atlanta Falcons for this game and just close our eyes because it's going to be gross. Sunday Night Football, we've got Baker Mayfield and the Bucs taking on Matthew Stafford and the Rams in LA. The Rams are favored by 6.5. The over-under is 49.5. This was tough. I was very, very, very tempted to take the Bucs here. But with the way that Stafford's playing, with his connection with Devontae Adams and Puka Nacua, and Kyron being a very, very solid running back, and that defense is top-notch of the league for the Rams, I'm going with the Rams to win this on Sunday night. I think it could potentially become a shootout if Baker's able to dice up that Rams defense. Stafford for sure is going to carve up this Bucs defense, but we could get a potential shootout here. But I'm going to go with the Rams at home to take Baker Mayfield down in Sunday Night Football. Last game of Week 12, we've got the Carolina Panthers going up against the San Francisco 49ers in San Francisco. San Francisco is favored by 7. The over-under is 48.5. I was tempted to take the Panthers with that Bryce Young performance, but then I remembered the 49ers have Christian McCaffrey, George Kittle. So I'm going to go with the Niners here on Monday night to take this game from the Panthers. But I think the Panthers could make this game interesting. The Niners defense is terrible, riddled with injuries throughout the year. So I can see Bryce Young having a pretty decent day. But with the weapons on offense, I think the Niners take this game at home and move on with their lives. So those are the picks for Week 12. Let's end the show like we always do with a DraftKings lineup, and I have a very exciting one for this week. All right, we came up empty with our lineup last week, so we are going to try again. This is a $5 bet. First place in this contest gets $400. We're going to try to at least double our money like we did before, but let's shoot for 400 here. At the quarterback position, I'm going with Drake May of the Patriots. He is sitting at 6,900 on DraftKings, so pretty cheap considering that he has a very, very favorable matchup against the Bengals defense. Running back room, I've got Kenneth Gainwell, hoping that Jaylen Warren does not play in this game. I think either way, he is still a good play against Chicago. He is at 5,500. And then we're just going to go kind of cheap again with running back. We're going to go Kareem Hunt. He is at 5,100 against the Colts. He's been the number one running back for this team. He's been getting a touchdown pretty much every week, so we're going to ride the Kareem Hunt train. Wide receiver, I'm going to stack Drake May with Stephon Diggs. He is 6,500 this week against the Cincinnati Bengals defense. So I wanted a piece of that Patriots offense. But not just that, I wanted a piece of the Joe Flacco offense as well. So with the Jamar Chase suspension, I'm going to throw in T. Higgins there. He is 7,100 this week, so I had to pay up a little bit. But against the Patriots and him being the number one target for Flacco, I want those targets. I want those receptions and hopefully a touchdown. So we're going to go with T. Higgins. And then to wrap up the wide receiver room, we're going to go Chris Olave. Against the Falcons, he has been a target machine. So we're going to go with him at 6,400. Tight end with the Drake London injury, I'm going to go with Kyle Pitts at 4,300. Kirk Cousins targeted him a lot the last time that Kirk started and Drake London was out. So we're going to hopefully that repeats with a bunch of receptions and maybe a touchdown for Pitts. And then at the flex position, I'm going wide receiver with DK Metcalf. And that was gross to say. But with Mason Rudolph potentially starting, he hyper-targeted Metcalf when he came into the game last week. So we're going to hope that keeps going forward in the right direction. He is 5,300, so I didn't have to pay too much for Metcalf. But I do want a piece of that Chicago Steelers game. And with him being the number one target for Mason Rudolph, I'm going to throw that in my lineup and hopefully hit there. And then at defense, this was a no-brainer. It's the Browns. They're only 2,900, and they're going against Geno Smith and that Raiders offense. So I considered the Jaguars, but the Browns were pretty cheap, and the way I wanted to build this lineup this week, it worked out very, very well. So we're going to go with the Browns defense in our lineup. So we're going to hope that we win some money this week with that lineup. I'm super excited for the Drake May, Stephon Diggs stack. I hope we are not predicting that game against Cincinnati. It could be a shootout. It could be domination, but I'm going to ride the Patriot train there. So that'll do it for this week's episode of the End Zone Report. We will return at the end of week 12 and look into week 13. The Thanksgiving slate. It's going to be really, really fun. We got some gobble matchups headed our way on Thanksgiving Day. Again, follow the show at youtube.com/the End Zone Report. You can also follow all the social media pages where I post all the artwork of the episode and other breaking news and injury reports. And also check out my movie podcast that I do every week as well, Cinematic Reviews. We're in the middle of the Marvel Friday event. We're going to be doing Iron Man 2 this week. We'll also be having the finale of the Lord of the Rings series finally coming out here. And then we'll jump in some other new releases along the way to wrap up the rest of 2025. So check out my movie review podcast, Cinematic Reviews, on YouTube and any of your podcast listening services. So with that, I hope everybody wins their fantasy matchups. I hope they win all their bets and their DraftKings and lineups. And we'll see you all at the end of week 12.